Hey, what's happening? If you clicked on this video and then you want to be a great poet or even an outstanding spoken word artist, well, you came to the right place. My name is Incomplete the Poet. The name Incomplete was given to me by Sister Sonia Sanchez back in 2002. She did a workshop, a poetry workshop at my alma mater, and I wrote a poem called Two-Way Mirror, and it spoke about date rape. And at the end of the poem, it was about a young lady who woke up. She was having a dream, the alarm clock went off, and it never did happen. And Sister Sonia Sanchez was like, no, my brother, that's not how these sisters deals with these ordeals. They actually go through this. It's not a fairy tale. It's not just a dream. They go. Matter of fact, that's incomplete. Go into the corner until you finish that poem completely, and don't come out until you completed it. So I spent the duration of her workshop finishing the ending of that particular poem that I'm going to share with you at the end of this video. Now, the first thing I want to do, and I know you want to be a wonderful poet, I know you want to be a great spoken word artist, but at the same time, there's some fundamentals that you have to understand about just basic writing. Okay, now there's 10 tips I want to give you, and then the first tip I want to give you is don't write to impress anybody but yourself. The moment that you compare yourself to another poet is that going to be the day that you're going to be chasing their shadow. Don't worry about nobody else. Worry about you and what you can accomplish and what you can do. Tip number 9: keep it real. Nobody don't want you to be talking about things that's not actual, that's not factual. We all about facts here, you know. The last thing you want to do is get pulled to the side and say, you know what you mentioned wasn't correct, you know. So always keep it real, always keep it honest. Now, if you doing a fantasy poem or a futuristic poem, then that speaks for itself. But if you giving facts and you laying it down as if it's correct facts, you have to come with it. You have to come with it. Tip number 8. Rhyme for a reason, okay? Every poem doesn't have to rhyme. Not every poem has to have this flow where every word at the end sounds the same. I have written a lot of poems that it doesn't rhyme, but it still has soul. It still flows, you know. So don't stay in a box of every poem has to rhyme, because you'll find yourself in a limited box, okay? Rule number 7, tip number 7 is wow is always a factor. Don't be a typical poet. Don't be that predictable poet. Sometimes you actually have to come outside your comfort zone to really talk about issues that some people won't necessarily talk about. Myself, I write therapeutic poetry. I write about my life, you know, and within that, I write about poems such as molestation, date rape, like I told you before, suicide, you know. So I'm really hitting on some real issues. I'll talk about issues that most pastors are afraid to speak about from the pulpit. I talk about issues that most parents kind of shy away from, because a dialogue needs to happen. We need to have a conversation, and that's one of the reasons why I write therapeutic poetry. Not only is it therapeutic for people who may be listening to it, but it's also healing for me. Okay? Excuse me. Tip number 6 is always keep it current. Nobody want to hear you talking about things that happened 40 years ago unless you have that age or that dated poem. You know, if you wrote the poem 20 years ago and you trying to give it as now, you have to update some of the wording in there that it can seem current, okay? People want to feel like you wrote that poem on the way to the venue, that you was just in the zone, you know? So always keep it current. Number 5, have a standard and live by it. For myself, I don't perform in clubs. I feel that my poetry has a reverence, you know, so that's the only thing about my standard, is that I never perform in clubs. I get a lot of invitations too, but that's really not my style, okay? The tip number 4, count the cost. Know that you only have 10 seconds to impress your listeners, your viewers, your readers. 10 seconds. And if you can't capture their attention within those 10 seconds, you lost them. So every time they hear your name being called, they won't really be anticipating you, because they already know that you're not coming with anything fire. You ain't coming with anything that's going to wow them or blow their head back. You know, what I do within the first 2 stanzas, or even the first 2 lines of my poetry, I'm slapping them in the face, you know what I'm saying? Because I want to get their attention from the beginning, and once I got their attention, it's pretty much a wrap. Tip number 3, do you. Nothing worse than a wannabe. I know you have a lot of poems and a lot of poets and a lot of spoken word artists out there that has their own lane, you know what I'm saying? But you have to work Work what works for you. If you're shy, play on that. If you're charismatic, play on that. Regardless of what you're going through, regardless of how people may perceive you, however you perceive yourself, play on that, because staying in that neutral zone, as far as when you're performing, is going to benefit you more than not, okay? Number two, pick and roll. Always have somebody that you can go to, that you can ask them, hey, is this poem any good, or how do you think my presentation was? Because believe it or not, when you start performing your poetry, it's more than just the words. It's stage presence. It's showmanship as well. So you always want to have somebody to go to. And last but not least, don't censor yourself. If you're writing and you're flowing and you find yourself in the zone, and let's say, for example, that you don't want to curse, but that word really emphasizes what you're saying, go ahead and write it down. You know what I'm saying? Now, when you get ready to perform at that particular venue, at that point you can edit it, where you're speaking in front of children, or maybe you're speaking in front of an inspirational crowd and you don't want to use that type of language. You can edit it then, but don't never, ever, ever edit it while you're writing, because you're only going to stunt your growth, you know? So those are the 10 tips I want to give you on how to be an outstanding, wonderful spoken word artist, and also a great poet as well. Now, if you take all that I just told you, as far as the 10 steps, I guarantee you it's going to begin to mold who you are as a writer. Okay, now I have some more videos coming up, and normally I drop my videos on Sunday, and so just continue to come back to the page. First, subscribe to the page, and then continue to come back to the page, and that way we can have a dialogue. And I want you to give me your questions. I want you to ask me anything, and I make sure to answer your questions, whether personally or on air. So once again, my name is Incomplete the Poet. I appreciate you taking the time to hear me out. And right now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and give you that poem I was telling you about, entitled Two-Way Mirror. Now, the poem by itself, it is a poem about date rape. And what makes this poem unique is that I wrote it from a woman's perspective, okay? Now, you can also find that you can also find that poem in my book that you can find at Lulu.com. You just look for my name, Incomplete the Poet, and you'll definitely find it there on Lulu.com. A two-way mirror. Do unto others what they did to you is what you say. Give me more friends that envy me is what you pray. Any man who's paying your bills is where you stay. Any dog that wear a fancy collar is whom you lay. Your mother told you the world is your oyster, do it best. Your father told you never settle for anything but your best. Your girlfriends inform you that your body is all you have, and your associates said if the relationship is not working, at least you got half. Your boyfriend whispered in your ear, if you love me, be mine tonight. Later in the night, he said, you gonna make it hard if you put up a fight. You thought it was love, but it was merely lust. Only thing you could think about was the betrayal, thrust after thrust. You wanted to speak up, but his weight kept you down. You wanted to scream, but you was afraid of getting slapped around. All you had the strength to do was look in his eyes and whisper, stop. Thinking he would see your pain and get from on top of it. Instead of stopping, it intensified. And all you was thinking was, Lord, keep me alive. Then all of a sudden, like on cue, he quit. And you was afraid to open your eyes, afraid that this was it. You open your eyes, afraid to see his eyes staring back at you as your brain is racing, saying, what did I say? What did I do? Well, I did tease him, pacify him, please him, but that doesn't give him a reason to force his way in me. I wonder if he'll forgive me for not being who he wanted me to be. But I didn't say no. I didn't scream no. I didn't whisper no. I didn't roar no. It's all my fault. And that's the poem right there called Two-Way Mirror. Once again, dealing about date rape. And if you want to know why I wrote this poem, just go ahead and hit me up on the comments below, and I'll definitely share that with you. I know everybody was like, I don't care. But anyway, you know what I'm saying? But once again, we're going to have a great time this season. I have a lot of exercises for you guys, some things that we're going to definitely work out, where to the point where you can become that poet, that spoken word artist that you want to be. Okay, now, you know, one of the scariest things is performing. I know you say, I know it's speaking in front of people. Practice doesn't make perfect. Okay, a lot of people say practice make perfect. It doesn't. Okay, practice doesn't make perfect. only perfect practices makes perfect, because wherever you stumble that in practice, you're going to stumble that in the performance. So just remember, perfect practices makes perfect performances, okay? That's 11 tips. That was the bonus I just gave you. Just go ahead and also subscribe to the page. You can also find me on Facebook under Incomplete the Poet, Incomplete DA Poet, you know? And let's go ahead and start this dialogue, okay? My first assignment for you is that I want you to write a poem, okay, about a secret that you have held, right? And it can be anything, you know, and you don't really have to say what the secret is. That's the creative thing about being poets, about being writers, is that the imagery that we put forth is something that's going to be so intimate that a person can guess, or they may wonder, or whatever the case may be. But definitely write a poem about a secret that you have had. Now, once again, I'm not your typical poet. I write about therapeutic poetry, okay? Poetry of healing, you know what I'm saying? Because I write about a lot of things, you know? Okay, for example, I'm going to give you one more poem. I shouldn't do this, so I'm going to give you one more poem. And I want you to tell me in the comments below what the poem is about. Now, this is a secret I held for a long time. The name of this poem is entitled Mirror of Laughter. Why me? Why do I get locked in these chains? Why I get involved with these things? I ain't asked for this burden or this experience. I try to be a decent man, and just the things I get. Because all my life I try to soar, but get bullied out the sky by an eagle. But that's my biggest fear, though. Falling back to earth, to reality, I'd rather that eagle devour me. Devour me, because for 7 years straight I was trained for this way of life. As time passed on, I knew it wasn't right, but as time crept on, I accepted it for what it was. It changed me. I ain't wanted to. Something about it just does. There was nights that was going to take place. I couldn't wait. And went from playing doctor to playing inmate. Playing inmate. What's wrong? Do you want me to cry about it? Reap about it? Shed tears about it? Crying won't change a thing. If it did, I'll be in my mother's arms right now, trying to explain to her how she'll never have a grandchild from me. But maybe that's why my father disowns me. See, I never was a bastard child. But trust me, now I am one. So that poem is called Two-Way Mirror. It was a secret I've had for a long time, you know. And of course, if I'm performing it this well, I've been sharing it with a lot of folks. But I want you in the comments to tell me what that poem is about. Okay? I didn't say exactly what it was about. I hinted about what it could be about. But go ahead, let's see if you can really guess in the comments on what that poem was about. Also, subscribe. You can also find me on Facebook under Incomplete the Poet. I've been enjoying myself thus far. We're going to have a great season, you know what I'm saying? Because before it's all said and done, you're going to be a wonderful poet and even an outstanding spoken word artist, because we're taking this to the hills and back. You heard me? All right, then. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you next time.